such as Hajj culture of the Balkan Sephardim. Okay, so being the fact, my lecture will not be concentrating exclusively on the Jews of Serbia, because entire this Balkan area is actually, as far as Jewish Sephardic culture is concerned, it's a single area. So it will be a bit of Serbia and bit of Bosnia and bit of Dalmatia and again bit of Serbia and bit of Bosnia and so on. But it's mostly what will later be called Yugoslav materials. So in the year 1858, Chacham or Ham Rabbi Avraham Moshe Finci, a scion of a famous Bosnian rabbinic dynasty, Los Fincis, published in Belgrade his selection of texts from Zohar on the first two books of the Pentateuch under the title Lekutei HaZohar. So this is the front page of the book, published in Belgrade in 1858. And then, as you can see from subsequent slides, there were two additional subsequent editions, more or less every 10 years. So next one was 1866 in Salonika, and then next one was in 1876 in Izmir, which proves that his book was very, very well received and accepted in Sephardic reading public all over the Balkans and Asia Minor. So these are the introductory pages of the Belgrade edition, and I'm only bringing it here because you can see the list of important Jews from Belgrade who actually prepaid the book. Okay, here proceeds the list of those important Jews of Belgrade, and he was the grandson of the famous Rabbi Yosef Finci, who was the chief rabbi of Bosnia. And here is the passage that we will concentrate for next few minutes on. But before that, I will also stress that he's younger brother of Chacham Yosef Finci, called after the mutual grandfather, and that Yosef Finci was the chief rabbi of Belgrade. And he also published a book in Belgrade, as you can see, Štampano u tipografiji Kняžestva Srbiji. The book is called Velaket Yosef. And our author was also uncle of Ham Rabbi Yehuda Leon Finci, the author of the book called Tikkun Chatzot. The book, this is the Chacham, the nephew. We don't have uncle's portrait or picture. And this is his book, again, printed in Belgrade, Tikkun Chatzot. And now, and this is the signature in Solitreo, in Sephardic script. And now I would like us to concentrate on something that has to do with the Hajj culture of Serbian and Bosnian Jews. So after bringing a translation of an Aramaic story from Zohar, the author of the book goes on to say the following. From here, I will just try to, yes, okay. From here, it should be learned that one should strive with all one's strength to make it possible for oneself to ascend to live in the land of Israel and make it one's dwelling. How good is the destiny of the one who is an inhabitant of those lands. And as soon as a person sets his mind to go and dwell there, God helps him immediately. Even though people are saying, since I'm observing the commandments and doing good deeds, being in my city is just like being in the land of Israel. That's not a commendable thought, because you can follow the divine commandments and do good deeds there also. Since that place encourages it, it would be enough just to have the merit of being able to go there, and great merit is needed for that. And it's not like the people say that you need money. It's all fantasy, since money doesn't do a thing. And now look at this. He says, I remember when I was a child, more or less in the year 5573, which corresponds to Christian year 1813, at the beginning of the month of Tammuz, my grandfather, Cham Yosef Finci, peace be upon him, went to the holy city of Jerusalem. May it be built and filled with people, fast and in our own days. At that time, there was a poor man by the name of Ham Rabbi Shemuel. He was a teacher in Jewish school. and he used to come every day to the Holy Synagogue in order to sing the religious poems of Rabbi Israel Najara, may his memory be a blessing, before regular prayers. And he was smitten by all kinds of heaven-sent afflictions. And it seems to me that he was also short-sighted. In the mentioned month of Elul, after the Hajjis from Bosnia had already left, he said he was going to a village for harvest. He took his phylacteries bag and he left. After Hanukkah, with the arrival of the Hajjis who left in Tammuz, my master and grandfather, peace be upon him, writes, let me tell you, my son, that as we reached the end of Elul, the mentioned Hamri Bishamuel just popped up in front of us. How that Jew got there and we are aware is not, I just need to remove this, yes, is not known yet. It shows that it's not money that brings one to Jerusalem, but rather merit. So, first of all, from here we can gather a few informations. It was just like the Muslims have a special time when they leave for Mecca and Medina. The Bosnian Jewish Hajjis, they leave in the beginning of the month of Tammuz. And then they return to Bosnia sometimes after Hanukkah, which is the end of Kislev, right? So basically we can learn from there for how many months they would stay on their trip. There is another thing very important in this short passage, which shows us that just like the Talmud, Bosnian Jews proceeded believing in something that's called Kefitzat Haderech. What's Kefitzat Haderech? Shortening of the way. So this simple and, no, not simple, this poor Jew who was afflicted by all kinds of disease, he actually left only in Elul, but he came to Jerusalem before everybody else, and nobody knew how he did that. I just need to underline that Bosnian Muslims also share the same belief, and also plenty of stories on people who would pray in Mecca every Friday, even though they regularly lived in Sarajevo and so on. So now one additional thing just to, to sharpen our minds. Okay, so this is a short story printed in the newspaper called Jevreski Glas in the year 1931, and it was sent by a Jew from Belgrade to the Jewish newspaper in Sarajevo by somebody called Lević. So we can assume that previously the family name was Levi, and that they added each in framework of Serbization, which was typical of Serbian Jews. And here there is a family member, an older lady, family member that comes to Belgrade, and they promise her that they will meet her at railway station in Belgrade, but she couldn't find them. And when she's describing what's going on in the railway, she's coming from Sarajevo. Sarajevo is a relatively smaller city compared to Belgrade, which was the capital of Yugoslavia at that moment. And so when she compares what was going on in the railway station in Belgrade, she says, "No hubo tanta gente a la estación cuando se fueron los Hajjis a Jerusalén." There were not that many people in the station in Sarajevo, even when the Hajjis left for Jerusalem. So we know that there was an annual manifestation, probably, not necessarily, but if there were enough Hajjis, they would all leave more or less with the same train to get to Dubrovnik, where they would leave with the same boat to the land of Israel. So the same way, there was a specific time when they would leave during the Ottoman times, there was also specific time when they would leave together during the Austro-Hungarian occupation. So there is another story which is even more interesting concerning our subject today. It was published under pseudonym Uno di la Bilava, one guy from Bjelave. Bjelave is a famous Jewish neighborhood in Sarajevo. It was also published in Еврейский Glas in 1931, and it says the following. La estación del Bistric, los judíos de nuestra ciudad, la llaman la estación de Pale. Or I will not only translate, I will actually make a short resume. He says there are two railway stations in Sarajevo. There is one which everybody, all the Jews call it Station di Pali, which basically is logical because Pale is to where the train is going first next thing. And he says that no Jew in Sarajevo had anything to do after Pale, right? So they would just go to Pale. Consequently, that station's name was Station to Pale. But the other station from where the trains left for Brod and for Dubrovnik, it was called Station di Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Station. Why? Because the people, because most of the Jews would go to that station for that specific day in the year when the Hajjis are leaving for Jerusalem. So this is Bistrik, and this is the station. This is Jerusalem Station, and this is the one such departure. But sometimes the Hajjis would be led by rabbis, and the rabbis were coming to the land of Israel to stay here. So this is the famous Sarajevo Chacham, Ham Ribi Avraham Mercado Hamechune Romano, and he left and moved to Jerusalem, but he led the excursion or the Hajj excursion of Bosnian Hajjis at that moment. Now, speaking of trains leaving for Ragusa, Bosnian Chachamim coming to Israel to stay and not only to become Hajjis. This is a famous misnaming story. This is a famous Chacham from Sarajevo, Ham Ribi Yehuda ben Menachem Halevi, and he came from Sarajevo to Yafo, and he became chief rabbi of Yafo. But when he came there, somebody asked him, or people asked him, where did he come from? And he said he came from Ragusa, because he was in Ragusa for a few hours. He used the train to get from Sarajevo to Ragusa, and from Ragusa, he used the boat. So that's why in Israel, he's called Ribi Yehuda Meragusa, and usually they even misspell his, they take this Mem Resh Gimel Vav Zayin He thing to be Margusa, or to be second name, even though it's not second name, it only implies where he came from, so it's double negative. It's double mistake, because first of all, he's not Miragusa, he's from Sarajevo, and second of all, even if he was from Ragusa, then it should be spelled Me Ragusa and not Margosa. Okay. This is, for example, our author, the author of the book Lekutei Zohar, mentioning him in context of serving raki to your guests, but we don't have enough time to read all of that, even though it's very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable reading. Now, what happens when somebody comes to Israel and returns to Sarajevo? So he becomes a Haji. And this is something very important to explain and underline and so on. The very word Hajj in Arabic is actually of Hebrew origin. And if there was less autism in a non-academic approach to Islam, then every single Wikipedia site or whatever should imply that, because you can vaguely explain the term Hajj in Arabic, but if you see it as something that developed from the Hebrew word Hag, which means a pilgrimage holiday, okay, then you can see the logic. The logic is to make a circle, in Hebrew lahug. So we have three such pilgrimages throughout the year: Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. So it was the Jews who introduced, at least to monotheism, the idea of pilgrimage festival or pilgrimage holiday. Later, it was taken on by the Muslims, but the Muslims developed a new cultural concept. Being the fact that Islam spread all over the world, not every single Muslim can really afford to go to Hajj once in a lifetime, let alone 3 times a year, as it was originally commended to the Jews. So those Muslims that would make the effort would return to their places, and they would be especially respected, and a honorific title would be added to their names. So they would be called, if they were previously, they were called, let's say, Ahmed, now they would be called Haji Ahmed. If previously they were called Mehmed, now they would be called Haji Mehmed. If previously they were called Dervish, now they will be called Haji Dervish. So the Jews picked this Muslim improvement or enhancement of a Jewish concept and borrowed it. So the Jews also started calling the person who visits the holy places in the Holy Land and returns back to Serbia or to Bosnia, he was called Aji or Haji. Amongst the Sephardim, obviously, mostly or usually Aji, because that age is not pronounced. So sometimes Hajia would become a nickname of a person. So it wouldn't be the honorific title, would become a nickname itself. So he wouldn't be called Haji Moshe. Certainly he wouldn't be called Haji Kabilo. He would be called only Hajia in Serbian, or he would be called Haji in Ladino. So that's one option. The title, honorific title, becomes a nickname, right? So this is, for example, one that announcement from Jewish Voice, from Еврейский глас, April 1933. Now, another option, obviously, is to add the honorific title to one's personal name. So I'll give you a few examples. Here we have when you move from one city to another city in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, you had actually to go to the police and to declare your new address. So here we see a Jew coming from Niš, and his name is Ajimair Levi. Okay, and he's moving to Belgrade, and he's proclaiming his new address. But his personal name is Ajimair, and his second name is Levi, and he's originally from Niš. And here there is another Haji Silvio Finci, who moved from Sarajevo to Belgrade, quite near where Professor Jelena Erdeljan lives, right, to Majke Jevrosime Street, number 20. Okay. Or, for example, here we have the book of the deceased people of the Jewish community of Sarajevo. Obviously, originally it was written in Sephardic cursive, and all these Latin transcriptions were added recently. But here you can see that somebody's details were written down as Aji Yaakov, without age. You can see in Hebrew, Aleph, Gimel, Yod, Aji Yaakov. Or, for example, this is a gravestone of Haji Abraham Moshe Atias. Interestingly, the Hebrew and the Serbian inscription do not match, because in Hebrew it says Hayakar umeule kevod harav, the precious and perfect honorable rabbi Abraham Moshe Atias, and the Serbian inscription says Haji Abraham Moshe Atias. For those amongst us who speak Serbian, obviously there is a mistake. This is a mistake actually typical for Bosnian Muslims, who don't always differentiate, not all Bosnian Muslims, but Sarajevo Muslims more specifically, who don't always differentiate between J and J, because Haji should be spelled with J. But anybody who is not from Yugoslavia doesn't even know what I'm talking about, so I will stop. So this is from another newspaper, and it says Haji Mosho Danon. So we see Haji Mosho, it goes with his first name. So by now, we have learned of two Sephardic ways of honoring the person who returned from Hajj. One is his honorific title becomes his nickname, Hajjia. Another is Haji is added to his first name, as we have seen, Haji Abraham, Haji Moshe, Haji Yaakov, or Haji Yaakov, and so on. Now, next thing, which is not all that common, or next possibility, which is not all that common, is adding Haji to the second name. So, for example, in the book of weddings, we have here Sarah and Abraham Papo, and then there is a note which says Nieto de Ajipapo Telal, a grandson of Ajipapo. So Aji, again without age, Aleph Gimel Yod. Aji goes with the second name, and it's added by his profession, Telal. Telal is public announcer. So that's third possibility. Now, well, I would like to elaborate and to see how Balkan culture was actually, there was common culture, many things were shared, but still, again, everybody knew what was his specific way in the shared thing. So yes, it was the Jews who developed the monotheistic Hajj. It was the Muslims who developed the honorific title of a person returning from the Hajj. The Balkan Christians and the Balkan Jews, they just loved this. Everybody loves honor, and especially people in the Balkans, they love honors. So the Christians and the Jews and the Christians, everybody wanted to be honored if they visited the Holy Land. And consequently, the Orthodox Christians also adopted the honorific title of Haji for a person who visits Jerusalem. Now, Muslims have a very strict policy. Haji can be given only to a person who visited Mecca and Medina, or who gave money to another person called Bedel to visit instead of him. And in both cases, the honorific title is to be added to the personal name exclusively, not to the family name, not to the nickname. How come then that you have so many Muslims which have second names like Haji Omer Spahic, Haji Numan Kadic, and so on? Well, these are family names who developed from personal names which included honorific title Haji, like Haji Omer Spahia. There was a person called Haji Omer, and he was Sipahi, right? He was a chevalier, and his offspring would be called Haji Omer Spahic. But in Muslim tradition, you never added to second name. Okay, in Christian tradition, in Orthodox Christian tradition, if you are going for the first time, you add it to your first name. If you are going to the second, if you are going for the second time, or if you are second person in your vertical family line, in other words, your father was there, your grandfather was there, or your mother was there, your grandmother was there, you can add it straight to your second name. So in Serbian tradition, a person, let's say he's called, let's say she's called Jelena Erdeljan, and she went to Hajj, Jelena, being the fact that her father lived here for many years, and her grandfather visited here, she could add straight to her second name, Jelena Haji Erdeljan, right? But let's say somebody else, if he's going first time, he would add Haji to his first name. If he's going second time, he can still stay Haji Jelena Haji Erdeljan, for example. Now, so what we see that every single community, ethno-confessional community, had its own way. Sephardim also knew about the possibility of adding Haji to a nickname. And just like amongst the Muslims, it could also develop into a family name. So here, for example, we see that announcement of Lea Montillo, and it says that Miss Lea Montillo, born Danon, died, passed away in 75th year of her life. And she was the daughter of the rabbi of blessed memory, Tzaddik Danon, okay, who was called Haji Bechorovich. Why he was called Haji Bechorovich? Because his father was called Bechor. Bechor was his nickname, actually, being the firstborn of the family. So the grandfather of Leah Montillo was actually Bochor. When he went to Jerusalem, he became Haji Bochor. Later, the entire family became Haji Bochorovich. So we see that actually in Sephardic policy of giving the honorific, just like with the very term rabbi. In Ashkenazi tradition, and it's probably very recent, but I never checked it, in Ashkenazi tradition, the title rabbi goes with second name, right? So you will say Rabbi Goldstein said to Rabbi, I don't know, this and that. Now, in Sephardic tradition, if the rabbi is not mentioned by his name, then the vocal in the noun is U, Rubi, as we can see here in the title of a story, or as we can see here in the second picture here, where one rabbi is this Rabbi, what's his name? Mercado, Ham Ribi Mercado, is discovered as Rubi del Degel Torah, the rabbi of the Society Degel Torah. Or we can see here the song, right? El Rubi con las criaturas, right? So it's, if there is no name, it's Rubi. If there is a name, okay, so we can see a billion of examples. We don't have time for all of them, but here is one story by another Rubi, by Rabbi Avraham Moshe Romano, called Buki, and he writes about a rabbi, and aquel viejo Rubi como tosía, el Rubi muestro, que lo engajó como Rubi a 16 fiorinis al mes, si le escapó el Rubi de pagar, and so on. However, though, once the title is connected to a name, it becomes a Rebi or Ribi, not a Rubi. It's a Rebi. And it always goes with first name. Second name can follow, but doesn't have to follow. But you never call Sephardic Chacham as Chacham Finzi. You never call Sephardic Chacham as Ribi Finzi. You certainly don't call him as Rubi Finzi. You call him as Ham Ribi Yehuda, Ham Ribi Yehuda. If you want to add Finzi, you can. Ham Ribi Yehuda Finzi. So, for example, you see here the famous Belgrade edition of Pirkei Avot, and you see Ribi Hananiah ben Akashya, right? Why? Because it's not anonymous rabbi, so it's with an E, right? With an I, actually, with a dot. Ribi Yoshua, Ribi Yosef, Ribi Shimon, and so on. Or here we see the Viennese edition of the Haggadah, and you can see whether in Hebrew, Amar Ribi Elazar ben Azariah, Maaseh beribi Eliezer v'Ribi Yoshua v'Ribi Elazar ben Azariah v'Ribi Akiva v'Ribi Tarfon. Aconteció Maaseh Ribi Eliezer y Ribi Yoshua y Ribi Elazar. Oh, disho Ribi Elazar, isho de Azariah. So in both Sephardic languages, in Sephardic Hebrew and in Sephardic Spanish, it's always Rubi for anonymous rabbi, Ribi plus personal name. Okay, so here you see, for example, the rabbi that we saw leaving Sarajevo for the land of Israel, and his nickname was Mercado. His real name is Ham Ribi Avraham Romano. But being the fact that everybody calls him Mercado, then the honorific title of rabbi goes with the nickname Ribi Mercado or Ham Mercado. Or, for example, here you have another famous Sarajevo rabbi, right? So he's called Yaakov Maestro. His nickname is Bechor, and everybody calls him Ham Bechor, Ham Bechor. So what we have learned from here is that Sephardic honorific titles go with the nickname if a person is referred to by its nickname. And this is actually pan-Sephardic or trans-Mediterranean, you can see, for example, that the Jews of Morocco, they call their famous Sadiqim Baba Sali. So people say, Sali means prayer in Arabic. So Baba Sali is the father of the prayer and so on. It's all rubbish. Sali is a nickname from Israel. So the name of Rabbi Israel Abu Khatsera is Israel Abu Khatsera. Nickname of Israel is Sali. And even when you call him, the Holy Father, you call him Holy Father plus nickname, not Holy Father plus second name or Holy Father plus formal name. So he's called Baba Sali because Sali is Israel. And here's his brother, Baba Haki. Again, Baba Haki is not because Hak is one of the names of God or Hak is justice, divine justice, and so on. It's all rubbish. Haki is Yitzhak, Haki. Israel, Sali, Yitzhak, Haki, Baba Haki. So the Moroccan Jews and Bosnian Jews and Serbian Jews, they add honorific rabbi to their nickname. Now, if a person is called by nickname, then his honorific title, Haji, would also be added to his nickname, as we saw with Haji Bokhor. However, though, if somebody's second name becomes his nickname, because everybody refers to him only by his second name, as we saw with Haji Papo Telal, then the honorific Haji will be added to the second name, not because that's the policy, but because this specific person is referred to by his second name. Now, something that I cherish the most in tonight's lecture. This is an envelope from the Jewish Museum of Belgrade. And in the envelope came these pictures. You see the family of Haji Kalmi Altarats from Banja Luka. There are 3 photographs which were taken between the years 29 and 34. So the guy with the hat is Haji Kalmi himself. And this is recently colorized, as you can imagine. This is the original photograph. Okay, this is what's written on the back of the photo, and this is the description which came with the photos from the family, and it says the family of Haji Kalmi Altarats from Banja Luka. One picture is from 34, Haji Kalmi Altarats himself. The other picture is the husband and wife, and the third picture is the picture we just saw, the picture of the entire family. This is the wife. Her name is Haji Flora Altarats, ni Papo. And he went to Hajj together with Haji Kalmi. And now the hat. Here I might be wrong. I never met in person Haji Kalmi Altarats. And because of the Holocaust rupture in community memory, we don't know enough about him or enough about the ways. I mean, as you can see, we are restoring everything from written material much more than from oral sources, of uninterrupted tradition and so on. But I imagine, and I underline that this is my own reading into the picture, that in Banja Luka there were not that many Jews, and probably Haji Kalmi was one of the few Jewish Hajis. And there were strong expectations amongst Muslim population, being the fact that a Muslim, when he returns, a Muslim Haji, when he returns from Hajj, he has a special hat. So and also very usually a Muslim Haji, after he returns from Hajj, he also grows a beard. And I imagine that this is what happened with Haji Kalmi, that basically everybody asked him, oh, so you went to Hajj, so where's your hat? Oh, so you went to Hajj, so where's your hat? So he had one. This is the way the hat of a Bosnian Haji looks like. There is a floral motif, highly recognizable. And I imagine that we don't have the pictures of other Bosnian Sephardic Hajis. Neither I would argue that this was a requirement. However, though, for Bosnian Muslims, it's quite a requirement. And it might be that in a smaller Bosnian city, such as Banja Luka, a Jewish returnee from Hajj felt that he should act the way the Hajjis are acting in Benelux. So here you can see the floral motif. Sometimes it goes around the fez, and in that case it's called Ahmadiyya, and sometimes it goes around the Ka'uk, or it goes without anything, and it has a special name for that also. And since well, actually, we don't have much more time. I would like to have some time for questions. I will just leave here with this picture. This is what Bosnian Jews refer to as small Hajj. Small Hajj is an annual visit to the burial place of a famous rabbi, Moshe Danon, who died in Stolets. He was from Sarajevo, obviously. He died in Stolets on his way to the land of Israel. He was a Kabbalist rabbi. He was a miracle worker. He was appreciated during his life. And that's why his grave became a place of pilgrimage, which is not extremely typical for Sephardim. It's rather typical for Hasidim. And amongst the Sephardim, it's typical, for example, for Moroccan Jews, whether of Sephardic extraction or of Berberian extraction or of Judeo-Arabic extraction. All Moroccan Jews do that a lot. Ottoman Jews don't do it that much, and that's why this specific custom of Bosnian Jews calls attention, and it's called small Hajj. So it's kind of consecration also of Bosnia, but it's in connection to the land of Israel because he was on the way anyways, and visiting his grave is considered to be small Hajj. Thank you for your attention. I'm on purpose, I'm stopping here. There's much more I could say about Rabbi Moshe Danon and the Purim of Sarajevo and so on, but I would like to make it possible for you to ask your questions in case you have any.
Well, thank you very much. I think this was a fascinating account of how there was a common religious culture among Christians, Muslims, and Jews, and how this actually manifested itself. So far, we don't have any questions, but we do have one comment, which is from Adushka Rutdimovich again. And she said that today we would translate the word telal as a PR person. So which may well be the case. So thank you very much for this extremely interesting and comprehensive account. And if there are further questions, please raise your hand and unmute yourself. And you can ask.
Vicky Martel is raising her hand as far as I can see.
Okay, well,
thank you very much for this lovely lecture. You mentioned that Chag is Haji, and also Al-Quds. I heard it from a Jewish man from from Iraq. He said there is no word Al-Quds in Arabic. It's Kadosh.
Yeah. There are many things where Hebrew and Arabic share the common Semitic root, and then there are other words which are obvious Arabic borrowings from Hebrew, and Hajj seems to be one of them, as there is no satisfying Arabic etymology to the word Hajj. And in Hebrew, it's very simple, lahug, which means to circle, and that's the very idea of Hajj.
But Al-Quds, when they say Jerusalem, Al-Quds,
well, that's
Al-Quds,
they proceed calling the place in. They also called it Bet Maqdis, like Bet Hamikdash, the temple.
Yeah.
So there is no doubt that the Arabic name for Jerusalem developed from Hebrew known Kadosh.
Yes. Thank
you.
You.
There's a question from Mr. Brill.
Thank you. Sfarad in Hebrew is Spain. On what basis are the Sephardic Jews prior to 1492 referred to as Sephardic Jews in Serbia or wherever in Balkans?
Because they came from Spain, as simple as that.
That's what I taught all my life. But you're referring, at least the lecturer prior to you was referring to the Sephardic way before 1492.
No, Professor Erdelian mentioned that there was a Romaniotti synagogue built in Dubrovnik, but that's Romaniotti, that's Eastern Roman Empire Jews. So later, these two communities merged. Overwhelming majority of Sephardim got Romanized in certain ways, and overwhelming majority of Romaniotti got Sephardized in many ways. There were small enclaves of Romaniotti who did not become part of the fusion, but most of the Sephardim were actually merged with the community that existed there previously. That community doesn't have anything to do with Spain, but all Bosnian Jews would sign, they would sign their name and they would add to it Sephardi Tahor. Whether the family is actually coming from Spain, like families Al-Bahari or Al-Taratz or Atias, which are old Judeo-Arabic second names from Spain, whether the families are Papo, it's a Byzantine Jewish second name. It doesn't have to do anything with Spain. But all Papos today speak Ladino. And all Papos today are members of Sephardic communities. And interestingly enough, in those few Romaniotti enclaves, there are no Papos anymore. But we do know today that family name Papo is Romaniotti name. So basically, overwhelming majority of the Jews in Bosnia or in Serbia or in Dalmatia, Bulgaria, Greece, and so on, came from Spain. And throughout the centuries, they merged with local Jewish population, proceeding this Sephardic identity and collective self-apprehension.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's a very good